We want to turn now back to the preliminary hearing in the fugitive ex-Marine murder case in California. Raymond McLeod is accused of strangling his girlfriend to death. He claims it happened while they were having consensual rough sex.
McLeod's attorney called on media personality and internist Dr. Drew Pinsky to testify in an attempt to bolster McLeod's claims. Well, now he's on cross-examination by the state. Take a listen.
Talking about erotic asphyxiation and how popular it was more common. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And a lot of that information that you received is from other people, correct?
And publications.
People you're in conversation with, so it's more current because it's kind of what's going on right now. Is that fair to say?
I always check with published data to make sure that it's consistent with what I'm hearing.
Of course. You told us that the purpose of erotic asphyxiation, when we're in the context of this, would you say it was in the context of a BDSM?
Yes.
Is there a difference between BDSM categorizing versus erotic asphyxiation?
That's a behavior within the umbrella of BDSM.
Okay. So within erotic asphyxiation, you stated that the purpose of this, the goal, is for arousal. Is that correct?
Arousal and enhanced orgasm.
Enhanced orgasm on either party, correct?
I beg your pardon. That's a good question because the arousal is more on the person who's doing the action, while for the orgasmic intensity to be increased, there has to be some restriction of blood supply and oxygen. So it's literally restricting blood supply to the brain that enhances the orgasm.
So the person receiving the strangulation is the person receiving the enhanced orgasm.
Correct.
So that would make sense. Then the purpose of erotic asphyxiation is not to be passed out. It would be to actually reach the point of orgasm and then release. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, there are people that seek the passing out, that they can't get the same level of intensity without walking the edge. And that's just certain people do that. But yes, most people would prefer to experience it.
And the hypotheticals that you were given by defense counsel, none of the facts in those indicated that it was somebody seeking out that type, correct?
Objection.
Ruled.
No direct information.
Okay. So, you also stated that because this is so popular more currently, it's becoming more of a communication, that you're constantly warning people about the dangers of that, right?
For 20 years.
Because it is extremely dangerous.
I've been very worried about it.
But people continue to engage in it.
Yes, they do.
Consensually.
Correct.
But people are also being strangled unconsensually, correct?
I'm certain that happens.
Anytime somebody is strangled, it's not automatically assumed to be erotic asphyxiation, correct?
Not automatically.
There has to be other facts and indicators to support that, correct?
Correct.
All right. And when you say you're emphasizing the risk, you're doing that publicly, correct?
Correct.
So it's fair to say that the enhanced awareness of the risk is more common.
You would think so.
You don't think over the last 20 years, you being on TV and millions of people hearing you, that it hasn't increased the awareness of this risk to anybody?
I was sort of shamed into kind of shutting up about it for being anti-kink.
And what does that mean? That means people are out there listening, correct? Because you were.
They're listening. That is true. But social media now, you can hear what they're thinking about it, and they certainly weren't agreeing that the risk was what I thought it was.
Certainly, the public services. This is dangerous. Do not do this, correct?
I've only seen that in relation to autoerotic asphyxiation and the choking game, so-called, that adolescents engage in.
Isn't it fair to say that somebody who engages in erotic asphyxiation, once they reach that point, it becomes enhanced hunger, I'll say? I can re-clarify. Is it fair to say that when somebody engages in erotic asphyxiation, that they have a yearning to continue with it?
Yes.
And when they continue with it, it becomes increasingly more dangerous.
There is a certain, in some cases, there can be tolerance to it, and yes, it can become more dangerous.
And when you say tolerance, do you mean that the individual is now going to have to be strangled for longer?
Yes, potentially.